Well, didn't expect this property to make a comeback.
That's right.
There you go.
Let me hear you say, hey, ho.
Hey ho!
No, don't do that. That's his mother.
Oh, don't you say it.
No, not to his mother.
Coming to America is one of those movies where I remember certain bits from it and laugh, and yet I don't really revisit the movie all that much. And so with the sequel coming out, I decided to rewatch the original, and I was genuinely surprised at how well it held up. Like, for so many 80s comedies, this one was probably one of the least completely dated and unwatchable. The thing about comedy is that it's subjective, and as times change, jokes can go from being hilarious at the time to dated, then hackneyed, and sometimes even just outright offensive. Like, there are some stuff that people found hilarious in the 80s, some of Eddie Murphy's old bits from his stand-up specials that just do not hold up to modern humor. And yeah, it's interesting to see just how the flow of comedy changes as people's comedic tastes and comedic opinions change and evolve and whatnot. And so while specifically the beginning part in Zamunda in Coming to America is probably the least good in terms of humor. It just feels very much like an excuse to show topless women. There's a really lame throwaway joke about the princess from Nextdoria being given away, and they thought, oh no, this curvy girl who is very pretty is not the just tits and ass skinny hot chick princess. I might actually get married to a woman with curves. Oh no. Yeah, like, they didn't even pick a woman who is much more unstereotypically pretty. They just picked a curvy girl who's a little older. And I'm watching this like, why are they acting like she's some hideous freak when she's just an older curvy gal? Like, that chick's still banging. Like, why are we acting like this isn't hot for some reason? But yeah, little things like that. But then as time goes on, and especially once they get to America, the humor is just boom, 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 boom. The barbershop scene, the Soul Glow stuff, Samuel L. Jackson, John Amos's ripoff McDonald's. It's all the Mr. Randy Watson. Yes, that whole like, that's the thing, is that some of the humor still holds up because it's still stuff that we're dealing with. Like the fact that there's a beauty pageant for Black empowerment or something like that. Just, things like that are just like completely, shitting on 80s style, like excessiveness and ostentatiousness. Like, the thing with Soul Glow is that I'm way too young for the Jerry curl, and that stuff should have gone over my head, but the commercials were just hilarious to watch. And just the bit where they're leaving the couch and the Soul Glow juice, the Jerry curl juice, has stained the couch. Stuff like that is just funny. Like, you don't have to know the reference to realize that, oh, their doofy hair left stains on the couch. It's so precisely written for the jokes, and it manages to hold up surprisingly well when a lot of 80s comedies have a tendency to feel dated. But what's interesting is that when it comes to an actual plot, the movie is pretty generic. Like, the plot is a traditional romance plot. There's liar revealed, there's, trying to hook up, and while Akeem and Lisa have a very sweet romance, it's very rom-com specific. Although Eric LaSalle is a very despicable villain in this. He's just every level of... He's like a black 80s yuppie, and he is just the worst. And he's such a great villain that you love to hate. But so much of what holds up is Landis and Murphy and Arsenio Hall doing this over-the-top humor. The barbershop scenes in particular, I would not be shocked if they ended up inspiring the barbershop series of movies, just because, and I'm guessing that's just how black barbershops are in general, because that seems to be a recurring motif, is black barbershops being all smack talk and just small talk going back and forth while they're cutting people's hair. But yeah, the barbers in that barbershop are just boom, 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 boom. And then there's just some random Jewish guy sitting there. And they show back up. They managed to live for 30 some odd years, for almost 40 years, Jesus, 35 years. They're still alive somehow. Wonders of modern medical science, I'll tell you what. But yeah, So yeah, if you haven't seen the original Coming to America, it still holds up fairly well, even if you weren't alive at the time. Like, I think so much of the humor still works and is enjoyable. So what do they do for a sequel? Apparently they bring it to Zamunda, and they make commentary on the inherent sexism of monarchies and also African warlords. I think the biggest thing is that making a sequel to Coming to America was always going to be an uphill battle. You've got this lightning in a bottle 80s comedy that was perfect for its time. It's kind of like how Ghostbusters tried to build on itself into a franchise when it was just so perfect in and of itself. And the more they tried to build onto it, the more trouble they had maintaining it. Here, trying to build onto Coming to America doesn't necessarily work, but what they did wasn't bad either. The main premise being that Akeem, despite being entirely in love with Lisa, apparently had an unknown bastard child with Leslie Jones. And you know what? If this movie was just to bring in Leslie Jones, fine. Then then green light by me, because yeah, Leslie Jones is amazing. Give that woman more work, and she is phenomenal in this movie. She is fantastic as Jermaine Fowler's mom in this, and she's basically kind of like another Harlem girl for Lisa to hang out with in Zamunda, and the two of them just play off each other so well, and they have a great sort of best friend relationship build up over the course of the movie, especially since initially, like, Lisa is thrown off because here's this random woman that my husband slept with, and she brought her and her son over to Zamunda to be kicked so he can be the next king. And yeah, so she's a bit put off, but she never takes it out on Leslie Jones's character. And in fact, they begin to form this sort of best friendship, and it's really sweet and fun. And in fact, I could have used more of that in the movie, but this main focus here is on Jermaine Fowler as Akeem's son. And you see that his character is very idealistic. We get to see Colin Jost, star of Tom and Jerry, the movie, as this douchey, yuppie, legacy sort of recruiter for a college or something like that. Or entrance somebody, I don't know what the term is, but Jermaine Fowler is calling him out on his racist bullshit. And he decides not to attend that college because it's a bunch of garbage, and he's not quite sure what to do with his life. And so then here comes this quote unquote dad that he never met, with this briefcase full of cash, telling him that he's going to take him away to become the prince of an African nation. And so it's mainly about how Lavelle, Jermaine Fowler's character, is not like how Akeem was struggling to fit into the role of a working class American. Lavelle is trying to be this prince of a nation, and he's kind of overwhelmed by it all, especially when he meets a love interest in the form of an actual a woman who wants to be a barber. She's the royal groomer, who handles Lavelle's hair, and they form a friendship, and then that blossoms into a love interest. And he begins to question why does he even want to be a prince? And meanwhile, Murphy is dealing with Wesley Snipes over here, looking like great value Idi Amin. Oh god, and Wesley Snipes, like, dude is killing it. He's just like so over the top evil as this warlord, and he has such great We need Murphy brought in Wesley Snipes for Dolomite is My Name, or My Name is Dolomite, the Rudy Ray Moore movie he made, and Wesley Snipes, dude needs more comedic work because the dude has killer comedic timing. He is great in comedies. And here he's this, he's the new warlord of Nextdoria and the elder brother to the woman that Hakeem turned down. And it turns out that he never told the princess, the princess of Nextdoria to stop barking like a dog and hopping on one foot. She is still doing it. Oh god, just great callbacks. And yeah, he is such a despicable villain. And then all that's going on while Akeem is trying to make Lavelle into the proper prince to take over because it's a monarchy. We gotta have a male heir. Meanwhile, his daughter's over here, like, actually prepared to do the job, but can't because tradition says we gotta have a male heir. And Arsenio Hall gets a new character. Well, that's the thing, is Murphy is mainly playing the same characters he did in the first movie, and Hall actually gets a new character in the form of this shaman who I didn't even recognize that was him. I did not recognize that was Arsenio Hall, but he's like the shaman elder character who dictates all of the rules and stuff. And it's mainly Murphy as a king trying to be the king, being a good king like his father was, who does show up in the beginning so he can die. They have a death concert. They have a concert to celebrate the dying of their king. Oh god, it's so crazy. I love it. And James Earl Jones is so great, even now in his old age. I'm gonna miss him when he's gone. He is such a phenomenal personality and actor and character actor. Yeah. So Akeem is torn between trying to be like his dad instead of being like himself, which is kind of his arc from the first movie. But it makes sense because now he is the king. He's becoming the king, so he needs to deal with this crazy guy in Nextdoria and try to be the best king he can be. So he's trying to be like his dad, but he needs to remind himself that everything he learned from the first movie, that it's not about being like every other king. It's just being a good king for the time you're in, and times are changing, and so he has to kind of adjust to all these things and deal with all of these issues, especially now that he has so much more responsibility. And yeah, the girls playing his daughters are all great, and yeah, that whole subplot with them is solid. The fact that there's a whole bit with a lion that's completely CG that you could tell wasn't really there. But it's fine. It's all right. I get that. But yeah, the other problem is that they've cut this down from being an R to being a PG-13. And that doesn't necessarily ruin the movie, but it does kind of neuter it in a way. In the same sense that a lot of these more modern kind of attempts to recapture old comedies and old R-rated properties don't feel like they're willing to go as far, and they're more willing to... It feels like a bunch of suits saying we can't go above a PG-13 because we need the most money, and if we do an R, even though it's Deadpool and a bunch of others have proven you can do R-rated movies and still make a ton of money, we've got to make the most money, and logically speaking, the most money can be made if we do a PG-13, so we do, and it's all a bunch of suits making the creative decisions, and it's... Yeah. Not to mention the fact that the filmmaking style is so different now. The way that the comedy is told, it's better storytelling. The humor is not quite there. I think Murphy, Hall, and Landis just had this rapport, had this style that they can't really recapture. They bring back the barbershop guys. They bring back the priest and Mr. Randy Watson. Mr. Randy Watson shows up in the best way possible, and I loved it. But they try to bring back these old things, and they basically peddle them out, being like, "Hey, remember this part? Remember this part?" And yeah, I think that's something you get from every sequel, is that they kind of suffer from the idea of, we need to do the same thing, but again, somehow. And while the barbershop stuff still worked, because, I mean, it's just a bunch of old dudes talking shit to each other. Yeah, eventually, once it came down to the story was overall better. And the addition of Leslie Jones and even Tracy Morgan, and especially Wesley Snipes, was great to throw these new things into the mix. But overall, I would probably watch the original before this, just because I feel like that nailed it so perfectly. And this one kind of, once again, it's following along in the shadow of that first one. And even though it's still really good, it's just can't really quite compete, because, once again, I think the fact that it's more of a studio-controlled production, we're seeing a lot more of the corporate business types at the reins, holding them back, when Murphy and Hall and even though Landis is not here, like a similar director could have allowed it to go even further. And I feel like John Landis not directing it, even though I don't even remember if John Landis is still alive, but I don't know if bringing him back would have helped, just because I feel like just the whole idea behind this production is so corporate that even though it's really good, it just doesn't work quite as well, because it's being held back by corporate suit types saying, we got to keep these things in line, profit margins and garbage like that. But for all intents and purposes, I think this was the best we were ever going to get from a Coming to America sequel. Like, the fact that this is as good as it is a goddamn miracle. Coming to America, don't watch it this week. This week, just for those who know, is the March 7th through the, I believe, 13th, maybe 14th. Best do it for the 14th to be safe. But there is a virtual picket line for Amazon in benefit of their workers. So I wouldn't watch it this week. After this, I would, it's a solid movie. Definitely check it out. But as for a sequel to Coming to America, the first one is still the best, but this is probably the best we were going to get. I can't imagine it would get any better. And if they try to do a Coming 3 America or something, then nah, man, I don't see that. That dog's not going to hunt Monsignor.